Don't you love a good carol service? Well, here in the UK, we're generally a pretty divided bunch on lots of things in life. But when it comes to Christmas and carol services, it's another story. A survey of the UK found that 85% said they like hearing and singing carols. 67% said carols are crucial in creating the perfect Christmas atmosphere. And 30% said that carols are one of their favourite things about the festive season. And it's funny, isn't it? In a time when some would say we shouldn't even call ourselves a Christian country anymore, that carol services coming straight out of Christianity are a national treasure. The carols that we are enjoying are the fruit of Christianity. And when I say fruit, I mean the good things that come out of it. Actually, one of the trends of 2024 has been a growing number of people having a fresh appreciation for the fruit of Christianity. Here was Richard Dawkins, long-time outspoken atheist, on LBC Radio this year. Let me quote him. "I call myself a cultural Christian," he went on to say. "I love hymns and Christmas carols. I feel at home in the Christian ethos." Or another was Elon Musk earlier this year saying in an interview, "While I'm not a religious person, I do believe that the teachings of Jesus are good and wise, and that there's tremendous wisdom in turn the other cheek. I'm a big believer in the principles of Christianity. I think they're very good." Two examples of people publicly appreciating the fruit of Christianity. And it's not just billionaires picking up on this kind of thing. As a church minister, I meet people all the time who are recognizing that there's something really desirable about the fruit of Christianity. Because there's something about the atmosphere in our culture that's taken away the feeling of awe in life. In a time where we're told to understand our enjoyments in life as little dopamine hits in the brain, where life and love is reduced down to chemicals, well, we like the carols and the hymns because there's an atmosphere of awe, of the transcendent. There is more out there. I am more than just chemicals. And also these days, there's just something very confusing about knowing right from wrong. These days, it feels hard to keep up sometimes with what you should and shouldn't say, and let alone understand why. Many of us crave the ethos, the values, and the fixed principles of Christianity. Actually, more and more of us would like our society to be shaped a bit more like that fruit. For example, live in a city where I didn't have to worry about my phone being snatched out of my hand on the street, or to worry if it's safe walking home from the tube on my own in the evening. Or to not live in the fear of making a mistake and being cancelled, out of the friendship group, out of the job. Generally, we'd like a bit more forgiveness around, a bit more turning the other cheek. And not just for our society, but to see that kind of fruit growing in my own life too. Like my character, being a forgiving, loving, good person, the best version of me. And my sense of peace, wanting the guilt I feel to go away. And for our families, I want to see my children to grow up confidently knowing right from wrong and having the confidence to say that. For them to have a deep sense of peace in their lives that's resilient in this tough old world. The one thing I want to say to you today is this. If you want the fruit of Christianity, you need the root of faith in Jesus. If you want the fruit, you need the root. Because Jesus is the wonderful counselor who gives wonderful counsel. He is the Prince of Peace who gives peace. And let me share with us why that's such good news from the Bible verse that's printed on our service sheets. It gives some of the titles that would be given to Jesus when he was born. Isaiah 9. "For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders. And he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace." It's worth just pausing on that first name there, Wonderful Counselor. Counselor is someone who gives counsel, offers guidance, advice, values. And wonderful is not how I generally use it in life. Mince pies after the service, wonderful. It's more like, here is counsel that's jaw-dropping, life-changing, whole of life reorienting, that kind of thing. Jesus is Wonderful Counselor. And if he is Wonderful Counselor, then the values that he offers us, they're good, They're not as bad as you might think. They're good values for us, for me, for you. But we might be wondering, well, how do I know that these values are going to give me good counsel, that these values are worth shaping my life around? Well, we could have a look at Western civilization for a start. Loads of our assumptions about equality, human rights, compassion for the oppressed, and those kind of things, they're really the fruit of Christian teaching over the centuries. But I don't really want to talk about that today. I'd actually like us to consider who these values come from. Now, if carols are one thing in this country we can all agree on that we like, another thing we can all agree on is that we hate leaders who are hypocrites. People who tell us to do one thing while they go and do another. And I think that's why we struggle to trust leaders these days who are making big claims on our lives. But consider for a moment the values that Jesus counsels us to live by, and he lived by them beautifully and consistently in his life. Jesus said, "Blessed are the humble." And he is the King of Kings who didn't live in a palace, but was born a baby, placed in a manger, an animal feeding trough. Jesus commanded people to speak the truth. He said, "Let your yes be yes, and your no be no." And when he was faced with lies and slander coming at him, he didn't play them at their own game. He spoke the truth. He was honest. Jesus taught people to love your neighbor as yourself. And when people came to him hungry, he fed them. If a blind beggar came to him, he opened his eyes. And Jesus showed no prejudice. Whether people coming to him were young or old, man or woman, he was kind to them all. And Jesus taught people to forgive. He taught his disciples to pray, "Forgive us our sins as we forgive those who sin against us." And when Jesus hung on the cross, quite unjustly, dying in agony, he prayed, "Father, forgive them. They do not know what they're doing." Jesus is no hypocrite hushing things up. He's not a showy virtue signaler who needs to be seen. The values that Jesus counsels us to live by are values that he consistently and beautifully lived by himself. He is trustworthy. He has good values. So if you want wonderful counsel in your life, come to the wonderful counselor. If you want the fruit, you need the root of faith. Now, we might think, Simon, that sounds like a lovely idea, but what happens when we break the rules? What happens when I don't live up to those values? Where's the power for forgiveness, for failure? How do we avoid one mistake and you're done? You're cancelled, you're out of the group. Because there's one thing we all know, we will make mistakes. I don't live up to Jesus' values with the beauty and consistency that he did. At times, I am guilty of being a hypocrite. I do the very thing I criticize others for doing. I am guilty of being a virtue signaler, doing things for people to see the good I'm doing, to satisfy my insecurity. At times, I am guilty of buying into cancel culture, wanting to enjoy the shaming of others to try and make myself feel better. And I guess, if we're honest, we're all guilty of being those things at times. We all fail to live up to Jesus' values. We bear bad fruit, and Jesus calls that sin. He's honest with us. So where is the power for forgiveness? For me, for us, that doesn't resort to the fear of one strike and you're out, that can actually deal with the real guilt and shame that we feel? Well, the good news is that Jesus is not just wonderful counselor, but he's Prince of Peace. Did you see that there, that last name given to him? Prince of Peace. Jesus came at Christmas to bring peace. How? By making a way for forgiveness. You see, that baby in the manger on the first Christmas grew up to be the Jesus that beautifully and consistently lived out God's values. And not just to show us the standard to live by, but to be our Savior too. On the first Good Friday, Jesus was crucified in the place of sinners. The one who'd made no mistakes was crucified in the place of people who had made many. He was crucified in the place of hypocrites like us. He was crucified in the place of virtue signalers like us. He was crucified in the place of sinners like us. Guilt and shame was put on him and punished on the cross. And that's how to give true forgiveness. Sin's not like ignored and hushed up, nor does sin mean one strike and you're out. But through Jesus, here is deep forgiveness. And it starts with yourself. The cross means that I can be forgiven by God himself. That's peace with God. Maybe some people don't like me, but the most important opinion in the universe on me, God's, has been declared. Loved. Forgiven. Guilt doesn't haunt me. Shame doesn't define me. God's forgiveness does. And that's peace with God. And that gives the power to forgive one another. I don't have to live in fear of breaking the rules and that's me, I'm done. We have the resources in the cupboard for forgiveness and restoration. I can be wronged badly by someone, even someone I called a friend, and I have the power to forgive them. I have the desire to, because I know how much God has forgiven me first. If you want to feel at peace in your life, come to the Prince of Peace. If you want the fruit, you need the root of faith in Jesus. So let me ask you, will you consider Jesus? Maybe trying coming to church in the new year. Actually, here, Sunday by Sunday, you'll find plenty of people like you quietly seeking a sense of peace in their lives, and you would be so welcome. Maybe try picking up a Bible for yourself. On our Thursday carol service, I heard one young man, as he walked through the doors and given his John's Gospel, say, "Free Bible, get in!" Quite right too. It's wonderful counsel. And it's why we wanted to give these to you as a gift. Don't settle for calling yourself a cultural Christian and coming to carols once a year. There is far better and more fruit on offer from Jesus for you. Do you want wonderful counsel? Come to the wonderful counselor. Do you want to feel at peace in your life? Come to the Prince of Peace. If you want the fruit, you need the root of faith in Jesus.